Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
After Mrs. Blunden's carriage left, Florence sat still, shocked and confused. Her aunt's words kept repeating in her mind. Florence started to believe the story might be true, that the money was really gone. She remembered one night when she was sick, her father came to her bedside. He asked her to sign a paper, and she did, though she didn't know what it was. Later, she asked him about it. He said, "I told you, didn't I? Your Aunt Margaret sent a note. I wrote back for you, so she wouldn't come here to take care of you." At the time, Florence was weak and thankful. She thought her father was being kind. But now, she wondered if he had tricked her. Had he taken her money, the money she saved for him? Florence cried out, "It can't be true." Her father was a good man, an honest man. He couldn't do something so bad. Maybe she misunderstood her aunt. She decided to wait until her father came home to talk to him. The idea of accusing her father made her heart ache. If it wasn't true, he would be very upset. But if it was true, Florence couldn't bear to think about it. She buried her face in her hands and cried. She gave up her plan to visit Miss Denham that afternoon. As the hours passed, a servant came to set the table. Noticing Florence looked ill, the servant asked, "Are you feeling unwell, miss? I'll get you some wine." Without waiting for an answer, the servant brought the drink and made Florence take it. Afterward, Florence lay back on her pillows, trying to calm her mind. Later, Mr. Harriton came home. He looked busy, holding some papers and doing calculations in his head. 52 and 50, no, 50 and a half, he mumbled. Then he noticed something. "Whose scarf is this?" "It's Aunt Margaret's," Florence said. "She was here," he asked, frowning. "I've told you not to let her visit. She is rude and heartless." Florence sat up and spoke nervously. "She won't come again, sir. She's very angry with me." "Did she say that to your face?" he asked angrily. "She's angry," Florence said, her voice shaking even though she tried to stay calm. "She thinks I lied to her. She went to her husband's old bank and she said." Florence stopped, looking at her father with worry. "Yes? What did she say?" her father asked, his face turning red. He avoided her eyes. "She said my money is gone." "Oh, Papa!" Florence cried as she hugged him. "It's not true, is it? Please tell me it's not true." "And if it is true, what then?" he replied sharply. "If my meddling sister hadn't said anything, you wouldn't have known until I was ready to give the money back. Do you really think I'd steal from you?" Florence didn't answer. She pulled away and cried harder. Her tears made him angry, and he started to feel like he was the one being treated unfairly. "Stop crying, Florence. This is ridiculous. I'm your father and your guardian. I have the right to use your money to help you. You're acting greedy, and I won't put up with it." Florence didn't respond, but her quiet tears eventually softened him. Sitting beside her, he spoke gently. "My dear child, please don't cry. It hurts me to see you like this. You're wrong to be so afraid, really, you are." "Papa, that money was everything we had." "It was for your future," she whispered. "As long as it was safe, I could handle everything else." "I know, my love. I didn't mean it when I called you greedy. You're the most loving and unselfish daughter. God bless you for it. Don't lose trust in me, Flory. I didn't mean to hurt you by using the money. I saw a chance to double it for you, my dear, for you. It's true. It's all we have left, but I believe it will work out. Surely, heaven won't let us lose everything." Hearing the fear in his voice, Florence looked at his face. For the first time, he seemed truly scared. His usual confidence was gone. "I'd lose my mind," he muttered, "if Mason failed me and I ruined you." "Florence," he said, almost desperately, "please don't doubt me. Mason told me the money is safe. He wouldn't lie to me. He couldn't. He wouldn't dare." "Don't worry, Papa," Florence said softly. "We won't talk about it again. I know you meant well, so let's wait and hope for the best." Her father's face brightened. "Yes, hope is all we need. Now you're my kind, smart girl again. When everything turns out well, and we go back to Northumberland, I'll buy you a pearl crown for your lovely brown hair. Would you like just pearls or pearls with sapphires?" "What? You don't want to talk about it now?" "Very well, my dear, but I won't forget." That night, Florence cared for her father with extra kindness. She spoke gently, but in her heart, she felt heavy. His risky actions had sealed their future, and she knew she had to prepare for the worst. When everything fell apart, she would have to be brave and take care of him. She decided that when the time came, she would work like the women she had met across the street. She waited eagerly for the right day to visit them. When Florence arrived, Susan Denham was alone. Susan welcomed her warmly, but soon her cousin Julia joined them. Julia was tall and beautiful, a few years older than Florence. She had a confident way of carrying herself, and there was something about her that made people notice her. She joked that it came from her French mother. Susan was quieter next to her cousin, but her kind and honest nature shone through. You could trust her completely, and though she didn't talk much about religion, you could tell it guided her life. Susan took Florence's hat and coat and gave her the most comfortable seat in the cheerful little room. Julia chatted away, and as they talked more, the cousins admitted they had wanted to meet Florence for a while. But for different reasons, Julia said with a smile, I wanted to know you because you're a lady, smart and talented. Susan, on the other hand, Julia stopped, looking a bit shy. Florence smiled and finished the sentence. She wanted to help me because I looked lonely and had no friends, right? That's why I've come to you now. I think you can help me. Susan stopped sewing and listened carefully, her face kind and encouraging. Florence's cheeks turned red, but she pushed through her nervousness. After a moment, she said, I need to tell you something. I think our situation at home will soon get worse. I need to work to support my father and myself. I want to be a governess. Susan sighed, and Julia quickly spoke. Oh, Miss Harriton, choose any job but this one. You don't know how hard it is. People treat you poorly, ignore your feelings, and crush your dreams. You must look and act like a lady, be well educated, and have good manners. But still, they won't see you as their equal. You can't expect kindness and, most importantly, she added with a bitter laugh, you must make sure their sons don't fall in love with you. Susan spoke gently. It's true that the job has challenges, but you're paid fairly. If you behave well, your employers will respect you. The children you teach may become very dear to you. Being a governess isn't harder than other jobs. Julia laughed. You've heard two sides now, Miss Harriton. Mine is the usual story, and Susan's is rare. Which do you believe? Florence thought for a moment. If this were just for me, your words might scare me, Julia. But I must do this for Papa. Even if my days are hard, I'll come home to him every night, won't I? Susan smiled warmly and held Florence's hand. You'll succeed. If you start with a good heart, you won't fail. Now, tell us how we can help you. Julia added, yes, let us know. If you've made up your mind, I'll help find you students. Will you use your real name? Florence blushed with pride. I hadn't thought about it. Maybe Papa wouldn't like it if I used my name, but I don't want to use a fake one. Julia laughed. No judgment, please. At home, I'm just Julia Denham, but when I teach, I'm Mademoiselle Julie. My French is much better than my English, and parents pay more for a French governess. Being called Mademoiselle pays for my gloves and collars. Susan frowned. Miss Harriton will be fine with her English name. Tricks like that aren't right. Susan then kindly gave Florence advice and asked questions. They decided that Florence should focus on improving her skills, especially music. Susan even offered her their piano to practice. While Susan left to find a helpful book, Julia asked casually, You know Lieutenant Mason, don't you? Surprised, Florence replied, Papa knows him, but I've only met him once at his mother's house. Why do you ask? Julia shrugged. Just curious. He's distantly related to a family I teach, so I've seen him a few times. I wish I knew more about him, Florence said anxiously. I want to know if he can be trusted. Julia looked surprised and a bit annoyed. Of course, he can. Who doubts his honor? I'm so glad you think so, Florence said with relief. Papa has done some business with him, and I've been worried about how it will turn out. Julia replied lightly, Lieutenant Mason wouldn't like hearing you doubt him. But that's the life of public men. People always talk about them. Susan returned with the book, and Julia quickly changed the topic, chatting cheerfully about something else.